Hey, I'm Kim Harden, and I'd like to welcome you to the research webcast on From Tweets to Digital Presence, Evolving the Structure and Strategy of Your Online Marketing Function. Today's speaker is Melvin Hines. Melvin?
Hi, good morning, and thank you for attending today's webinar on From Tweets to Digital Presence. The purpose of this webinar is to give participants an inside look at how we approach the particular client's issue regarding making digital marketing more effective for them, as well as what are some insights that we can have for you and your organization. By the end of this webinar, you should be able to leave with a deeper understanding of how peers are approaching digital marketing, as well as some possible next steps that your organization may be thinking about when it comes to digital marketing. So let's start with talking a little bit about the client who commissioned the study. Our client was a leading healthcare organization who was struggling to answer one simple question: how do we make digital marketing better? As a client commissioning the research with best practices, we not only listened to the issue and came up with recommendations, but we also took a look at how best to stay on track with that issue. So in this case, we wanted to make sure to define digital marketing a little more broadly than you may be used to. We wanted to include not just websites and social media, but also things such as search engine optimization, search engine marketing, and the use of mobile applications. The full report also includes details on some of these as well as other areas that we focused on. We also suggested that for this type of study, it would be best to hear from organizations across various industries, so healthcare companies as well as non-healthcare companies, as well as industries that include regulatory requirements, so that we could get a fuller understanding of the use of digital marketing. You'll also see organizations that were included that we would like to say are on the cusp of, or the cutting edge of digital media. So where does our information come from? As you can see on the left, we took a whole gambit of different participants. Although we started with close to 90 participants, we ended up, based upon the types of answers we were receiving, the types of information that we had, winnowing it down to 44 key clients. And these clients you see on the left. We have everyone from Pfizer to State Farm to the University of Georgia and Coca-Cola in this study, to create a very robust idea of digital marketing and how different companies are trying to accomplish this idea. What you'll also see are the different industries that we used for participating in this benchmark study. Now, what might not be a surprise is that nearly 60% of the benchmark class are from healthcare industries, since that has typically been the companies that we approach. However, you'll also see that we had a pretty large gambit from financial services industry, technology companies, manufacturing, as well as other industries such as retail, electronics, and some of the others. So before we move into the study, one of the things that I want to make sure that you guys understand are the different segments that we wanted to use in examining the study. And you'll see these segments pop up more or less as we go throughout this study and further beyond as you might speak with us on a one-to-one basis. So the first group is the healthcare segment, which we abbreviate as HS. This healthcare segment comprises 23 companies from the medical device, pharmaceutical, and biotech industries. You'll also see the non-healthcare segment, which we have as NHS. The non-healthcare segment, which you'll see depicted in green, includes the other industries that we were talking about earlier. And finally, you'll see a segment called the mature peer segment, or the elite performing segment. This segment is really comprised of 8 companies, and the way that we created this segment was by taking a look at some of the questions that we asked and looking to see how the responses were. So we first started with the types of questions that we asked and the types of responses we got from those questions to garner the companies that you see represented, as opposed to the other way around. Some of the criteria include ongoing investment in digital marketing, staffing, and budgeting, comprehensive using of digital marketing metrics, which you'll see us get into a little bit more later on, as well as integrated views of managing internal and external resources. And we came up with a segment that includes Bayer Healthcare, CSC, Dell, Emirates Airlines, GE Healthcare, Muriel, Thermo Fisher Scientific, and Volkswagen. So now that we've moved through some of those beginning points, let's talk about what we learned from the study. There were really 6 key takeaways, and we're going to go through each point of learning and then follow up with how this can help you and your organization. So the first key point to point out are that really for $1 billion plus companies, which made up over 90% of our benchmark class, there really wasn't a purely centralized or decentralized structure that tended to work best. Each one has their cons and each one has their benefits. Most respondents said that they use a hybrid digital marketing structure. However, across industries, they are strategically centralizing their key activities. So let's think more deeply about why a hybrid approach would work here. What we found is that a hybrid approach works best for large organizations because of the need for the benefits of alignment across the entire organization, but also needing that flexibility that's associated with having experts in your various business units, brands, therapeutic areas, what have you. So within these hybrid organizations, how should a marketing group organize their reporting structure? Well, what we found is that organizations are typically most efficient when digital marketing groups directly report to their central marketing group, or COE, or Center of Excellence. They also have dotted line reporting to their business units or brand groups or those therapeutic areas that we were talking about. So as you can see here, we have 58% who reported direct line reporting to their centralized group, as well as a 28% that had a dotted line reporting. Now, as you can imagine, this can create the potential for conflict between supervising the digital marketing groups, especially because the company wants a strategic approach that aligns with the company's overall strategy, but they also need the business units to have a more tactical approach. So what we found is that the best way to overcome this issue is to create incentives that motivate digital marketers to align with the company as a whole. This can occur through such activities as financial incentives, company-wide recognition or programs, different types of promotion, among other things that you can create. But basically, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that these digital marketers who are typically placed within those various business units still are keeping their thinking caps on when it comes to the overall alignment of the organization. The second key point that we recognized was that the centralized management of digital marketing activities were the most effective. There were complaints associated with these centralized digital marketing structures, which would include redundancy, brand inconsistency, added costs, and for healthcare companies, regulatory risk. So let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into this. This slide that you're looking at right now is a very important slide. So I want to make sure that you get the full gist of what it's detailing. It's the intersection of 3 key questions that we asked our participants. The first question that we asked was, does your organization participate in the following activities? And you see these activities in the first column here: blogs, corporate strategy, SEO, social media, webcasts. The second question we asked was, if so, what type of organizational structure oversees each of these efforts? So as you can see here, we have a centralized approach. We have a center of excellence, which, let me take a pause for a second and explain what we mean by center of excellence. Center of excellence, we mean, is one centralized group where various experts from around your business or organization come together to try and accomplish one particular goal. So here, that would be digital marketing. The experts are spread throughout, but at the same time, they're all aligned with this center of excellence type approach. The next is decentralized marketing group, and finally, hybrid approach. Now, we have actually 2 different hybrid approaches in our full report. For now, what I have done is just make it one hybrid approach. And that hybrid approach basically talks about what we were talking about earlier, where you have a centralized group as well as people within the different business units who are also working together. Now, the third question that we asked was, how effective would you rate your organizational structure's ability to carry out the activities on the left? So what you see here are the different percentages that we got for those that said highly effective. So for example, if we take a look at blogs, we recognize that the hybrid approach was rated highly effective by more respondents than any of the other 3 categories. So that's how you would look at this. Now let's zoom out for a little bit and see what we're noticing. What we're noticing is that more often than not, the centralized approach, the center of excellence type approach, and even the hybrid approach to some extent are those that are considered most beneficial for each of these different categories on the left. What's more important, however, is that the decentralized approach is not as effective. As you can see, it isn't considered first or second in any of these categories. And as you'll see, green is the first most effective and yellow is the second most effective. So we see that not a single one of these categories has decentralized as any one of the most effective. Now, for some of these things, you're thinking, well, this makes a lot of sense. So for example, with corporate strategy, that makes a lot of sense. With business unit strategy, that can make sense. However, what about things such as social media? Why should social media be more of a centralized approach? Well, social media is better handled through a centralized structure. This reduces the chance of misalignment among the various social media channels. So, for example, you may have heard the story about KitchenAid, who just a few weeks ago during the first presidential debate accidentally tweeted a pretty negative comment in jest about the President Obama's grandmother, deceased grandmother. Once the executives found out what happened, they rushed to find out what exactly had happened here, what was the cause of the problem, and it turned out that there was a junior marketer that was on the team who had his own personal Twitter account and accidentally tweeted it towards the overall KitchenAid account as opposed to his personal account. This created a huge backlash the next morning that they ended up having to find ways to really rope in and keep in control. Cynthia Soledad, who was KitchenAid's Senior Director of Marketing, ended up issuing a statement to CNN saying, during the debate, a member of our Twitter team mistakenly posted an offensive tweet from the KitchenAid handle instead of a personal handle. The tasteless joke in no way represents our values at KitchenAid, and that person won't be tweeting for us anymore. So as you can imagine, this was something that was not taken lightly by KitchenAid. But that spin control that had to happen was because someone who was that far removed from KitchenAid's overall strategy was able to have such a major impact on the overall organization. In the end, Cynthia said, "I'm deeply sorry to President Obama, his family, and the Twitter community for this careless error." Now, not only are organizations major proponents of centralization, they're proponents of becoming more centralized. As you can see from here, nearly 2/3 of companies have become more centralized over the past 2 years. In fact, 88% of mature companies have become more centralized. Another 1/3 have had no change, but most interestingly, again, only 7% of decentralized companies, or only 7% of companies have become more decentralized over the past 2 years. Now, let's take a look at some of the reasons why it's important to centralize. This was one of the questions that we asked. Why centralize? Well, as you can see, some people say that it brings coherence around approach and investments. That was by 4 respondents. We also had budget reductions led to a need to have to create that centralized activity. Senior management pressure. Customer demands for information that spans across business unit boundaries. This is a key one, an important one, because regardless of what you post in one city, because of the power and influence of the internet, it can easily be sent and spread across all cities across the nation, and that's what we saw in the KitchenAid example. Digital marketing competitive disadvantages, cost and speed, changes in organizational structure, and greater investment in our digital marketing initiatives. These are all reasons to want to centralize as opposed to decentralize your digital marketing function. Now, our third point is that a use of a center of excellence is typically linked to high digital marketing performance. Many companies use a center of excellence, and we spent a little while earlier talking about what exactly a center of excellence is. What we found is that 39% of companies have a specially designated center of excellence for digital marketing. Mature organizations are not only more likely to have a digital marketing center of excellence, they're also more likely to use the center of excellence to deploy marketers into their business units. Now, what I want to show here goes once again towards highlighting the fact that the the head of your digital marketing organization should be as closely aligned to your overall organization as possible. What we're seeing here is that active leadership of digital marketing does tend to cluster around the director level, where 43% of companies situate their senior-most digital marketing executive. It's not uncommon, however, for organizations to establish a digital marketing head at the VP level or even higher. Now, what we see as well is that non-healthcare companies are much more likely than healthcare companies to have a senior VP sitting up in that digital marketing or leading the digital marketing function. And that's one of the things that we would advocate here as well. Now, why is it important to have this high reporting relationship? Well, it's because digital marketing is one of the few areas in a company where message misalignment can have a major impact, not just on customer views of the organization, but also on the employees' views internally. We spoke to one participant about how his new CEO required all the various business units to submit marketing materials that they're using across the organization. The exercise was really kind of baffling to many of the people within the organization, because in the midst of so much change, they were wondering, why would the CEO focus on this particular initiative? Well, what turned out was that once all the materials were submitted, it became clear, and the CEO was able to showcase that each business unit, acting on its own, was projecting a different image about the company from every other business unit in that company. This included logos with varying colors, fonts, sizes, and other types of misinformation. And this was when everyone recognized as an organization that it was time to become more aligned. So as you can see, it's immensely important for large organizations to have a digital marketing group that's closely aligned with the overall strategy of the organization. The fourth point that I want to make here is that most healthcare companies are lacking behind other industries in formally tracking their digital marketing analytics. Now, this is important because those that track fewer metrics are more likely to find metrics unhelpful in general. What we also find is that those that do a great job of tracking tend to think much more highly about their digital marketing organization as a whole. This is because they know what works and what doesn't work, and consequently, they're able to make the right decisions moving forward. So let's take a look a little bit more differently about ways in which healthcare companies tend to differentiate from non-healthcare companies, as well as where we see some of the trends happening with digital marketing budgets. The first thing that you may notice is that among non-healthcare companies, twice as much of their budget goes towards search engine marketing and search engine optimization. Now, as we'll show a little bit later on, these are some of the more rote opportunities to increase your ability to influence your digital marketing impact across all of your clients, across all of your channels. But as you can see, healthcare companies tend to lag behind non-healthcare companies when it comes to this. What we also see are that non-healthcare companies are 3 times more likely to invest in social media than healthcare companies are. And as we'll see later on, there's regulatory risk that's associated with some of the reasons why healthcare companies are a little bit more hesitant to do so. But there's lots of upside benefits to doing this, and we would actually advocate for that happening. Now, what we also see as most important, that's really key here, are the corporate digital strategy and the digital analytics here. Now, as you can see, non-healthcare companies are twice as likely to expend their budgets on digital strategy and on digital analytics as healthcare companies are. This is the idea around planning, this is the idea around tracking, and around measurement. All 3 of these things are key to ensuring that your digital marketing organization is successful in all of its various efforts. Now, some of our last 2 key points that we've noticed are that we noticed that non-healthcare companies are more likely to commit FTEs to digital marketing than healthcare companies. And we're also noticing that digital marketing budgets, especially in the future, especially within healthcare, are expecting to grow. So let's take a look at some of the information that we're gleaning from this. Here are some of the trends that we're expecting to see. As you first notice, over the past couple of years, of all the companies that we ended up interviewing and asking for their responses for, half of the companies are expecting their digital marketing budgets to grow by more than 10%. Now let's think about that. 10% is a pretty large budget increase. Another quarter are expecting it to grow by at least 0 to 10%. And very few are expecting a decrease or have received a decrease in their budget. And over the next 2 years, we're expecting the exact same thing. Half of companies are expecting to increase their budget by more than 10% again. And another quarter are expecting to see their budget increase by another 0 to 10%. And very few people, once again, are expecting to see their budget decrease. So what about your organization? Is your organization expecting their budgets for digital marketing to increase, or are they expecting it to decrease? This shows just how much your organization needs to focus on digital marketing in order to increase that alignment. One of the things of note for healthcare companies as well is that 72%, so nearly 3/4 of healthcare companies, are actually planning to increase their budgets by more than 10%. And 84% of mature peer companies are expecting to increase their budgets by 10%. So this is one of the ways, this is one of the areas that we actually want to hone in on a little bit more as we move forward to find out what's driving this growth behind the budget increases and exactly how much are we seeing these budgets increase by. Another note on staffing that's key is that among non-healthcare companies, 1 in 8 marketers works in digital marketing. But in healthcare companies, it's only 1 in 11. This kind of shows how understaffed healthcare companies tend to be as opposed to non-healthcare companies. Let's take a look at this a little bit more. We see the averages here. If you look at the second chart down below. So there are only 9% of healthcare companies are digital marketers. 9% of marketing FTEs for healthcare companies are digital marketers, whereas it's 12% on average for non-healthcare companies. But we see that grow even more when you get to, for example, the 75th percentile. There, it's up to half, whereas it's only 13% for digital marketing, or not for healthcare companies. So you can see that overall, non-healthcare companies are really investing a lot more in terms of FTEs and staffing than healthcare companies are. What we're also seeing on average is that over $600,000 is being spent on marketing per year. What we've noticed is that of that $600,000, on average, 17.5% are going towards digital marketing. So what we're seeing is that of that $600,000 that you see right here on the chart, $110,000 is about the average mean for digital marketing per FTE for each organization. So think about how that works with your organization. Would you say that it's around $110,000 per FTE? What we're also noticing is that on average there's a 10% increase in that budget increase. So we'll notice that over the next couple of years we'll see an additional $11,000 per digital marketing FTE going into digital marketing budgets. Now, we've looked at those 6 key points. I want to just reiterate really quickly those 6 key points. That number 1, the majority of organizations are using hybrid digital marketing structures. Number 2, centralized management of digital marketing is becoming more effective. 3, use of centers of excellence are linked to high digital marketing performance. 4, top organizations tend to benefit from better metrics tracking. 5, non-healthcare companies are committing more FTEs to digital marketing, but conversely, 6, digital marketing budgets in healthcare companies are growing at a much larger rate than non-healthcare companies. Once we see those 6 key points that we've gone over earlier, we now want to ask the question, how can we make our digital marketing teams better? What can we do to increase our ability to make our digital marketing organizations more effective? Well, let's take a look at how digital marketing structures have evolved over the years. In the very beginning, 5 to 8 years ago, digital marketing was very decentralized. It was managed by different business units, by different brands, by different therapeutic areas. And the benefit of that was that it did allow companies to do something. It allowed your subgroup to get into Facebook, for example, or to get into Twitter. But it really ended up becoming inefficient, and there was inconsistent messaging because there was no one who was really aligning all these different avenues together. And they were able to pervade the internet sphere so quickly that there wasn't really much time for changing. So what have we seen with digital marketing structures happen lately? Well, we've noticed that they're becoming more centralized, which is a good thing. We've talked a lot about how centralization is key. Well, like we talked about with this hybrid approach, we don't want to become too centralized, because if you have too much of your organization in one key area, what ends up happening is you don't have those experts in those various business units to be able to carry out that message and make sure that it works well for the business units. So as we can see here with these pros, it's leveraging expertise and it's creating that consistent strategy around messaging, but there's a disconnect with those business units and brands. So what are we advocating? Well, as we've seen in this study, the optimal mix going forward is one that creates that alignment that's beneficial for centralized organizations, but also creates that flexibility that's beneficial among decentralized organizations. We need to have that expert group that's at the middle of your organization, but at the same time have the various business units that can tackle the more tactical aspects of the organization going forward. So this is what we would advocate for your organization, your digital marketing structures. So what are some of the specific steps that your organization can take to move forward? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. There are 5 key things that you want to keep in mind. The first is to learn from that past. Make sure that regardless of how far you move more towards that optimal mix, that you're avoiding the pitfalls that are typical of these more decentralized models, such as redundancy, such as added cost. Make sure to remember that organization that we talked about earlier, who had the various logos and the various marketing messages that weren't creating that alignment, and that the CEO ended up uncovering was actually hurting his business. We want to make sure that that isn't happening in your organization as well. And you can see how our respondents rated some of these things as part of significant drawbacks or minor drawbacks. Redundancy, very significant. Brand inconsistency, very significant. Added costs, regulatory issues for healthcare companies, and then just overall strategy and message misalignment. Here's a quote from one of our respondents about leveraging the advantages of a centralized strategy. This partner said that you should centralize your infrastructure and your template solutions, number 1. Then number 2, you should set up a robust digital asset management solution to capture and reuse this digital intellectual property. For example, those are some of the things we were talking about earlier with logos, with messaging, with things that create that robust brand, not just for your customers that are on the ground, but also your customers that are in the virtual sphere. And then third, and you'll hear us talk a little bit about some outsourcing of Rote activities that can be beneficial for your organization, but you want to make sure to insource for design and analytics where possible. We know that across healthcare companies and really across all businesses right now, in such a tumultuous economy, it's key to try to decrease the types of investments that we're making. But at the same time, it's important that the things that we're using to decrease aren't the things that are going to end up hurting us overall. And so we want to make sure to insource this design. We want to make sure to insource our analytics. We want to make sure to insource the things that are key towards us making sure that we're leveraging the internet and the digital marketing arena to market our organization as a whole, as well as the products that we're offering. Number 2, we want to strengthen our connection between the center of excellence and our business units. We basically want to foster a digital culture that hires, trains, and champions digital marketing innovation. As you can see here, we asked the question of what kind of reporting relationship do your digital marketing groups have or maintain with the business units and the center of excellence. And 54% say that there's a COE and business unit dual reporting relationship. 54%. This is the best matrix. This is the best way for a matrix organization to work well. As you can see, only less than a quarter mentioned just reporting to a center of excellence, and less than a quarter mentioned reporting just to a business unit. Now, if you're having questions about, my organization and how does a Center of Excellence work well within my organization, feel free to reach out to me and we can talk more specifically about how we see a Center of Excellence working well as opposed to just a centralized marketing group, and what are some of the benefits and costs and what are some of the ways to be able to move the organization into that path. Here are some of the improvement opportunities that we can advocate, however, as of right now. Number one, you want to create high-level councils of senior marketing leaders and business unit heads to collaborate on these new initiatives. And number two, as we were talking about earlier, you want to use a rewards and recognition program. This incentivizes the sharing of knowledge and new technologies among marketers at the business unit level, but it also increases the ability for these marketers to align overall with our organization as a whole. And that makes sure that across the geographic sphere, all of our clients and customers are understanding and getting the exact same message. Number three, we want to be able to increase our digital marketing efficiency. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. We want to outsource more of the rote digital marketing activities that we see. So this may include the SEO. Remember our earlier slide where we saw that non-healthcare companies were much more likely than healthcare companies to do things such as search engine optimization and search engine marketing. Now, we recognize that these are tasks that can really expend a lot of a company's resources, and maybe that's part of the reason why healthcare companies are less likely or less inclined to do that. But they're actually hurting themselves and shooting themselves in the foot when they're not taking advantage of some of these key digital marketing activities. What we advocate is outsourcing some of these more rote activities and, like we saw earlier, insourcing some of the more key activities, such as your analytics, such as your design. And that's what you see here. 2/3 of employees, or FTEs, are usually dedicated towards insourcing, and 28%, or a little over a quarter, are outsourced. Now, for those of you guys who've been looking closely, you'll notice that this actually doesn't add up to 100%. And that's because another 6% are usually dedicated towards offshoring. And we noticed that only 1 in 5 companies actually offshore some of these activities, and so we wanted to unclutter the slide so that we could get to some of these key activities. Number 4, you want to hold your digital marketing activities, your digital marketing group, accountable for the returns on investment. Make sure to use some of these additional metrics to gauge the digital marketing impact. Here's some of the metrics that we asked all of our respondents. Do you employ these? And there's a key thing that you're seeing here. You see a very big bar graph for highly effective, and you see a very big bar graph for don't use. So what we're seeing is that those who use these metrics are more likely to find them highly effective. But a lot of organizations don't use them. What's key, once again, for healthcare organizations is that a lot of healthcare organizations don't use it. So if we take a look at leads generated, for example, we see that 17% of the benchmark class don't use leads generated as a metric. Well, of that 17%, all of them are healthcare companies. Not a single healthcare company uses leads generated as a particular metric, whereas all of the non-healthcare companies do use it, and most of them say that it's highly effective. Same thing with customer response rate. Almost the same thing with reputation impact. We're noticing that lots of companies are finding these things effective, but at the same time, a lot of other companies aren't using it. So take a look and assess your organization and see whether or not this is something that can help your organization move forward. Here's some of the keys to digital marketing success. We noticed that performance metrics and processing those insights create an improved digital marketing structure. In fact, one interviewed executive said that continued analysis and optimization of programs is essential to program success. Basically what it does is it allows you to see where the field goal is so that you can kick the football into the right direction. Otherwise, you're just kicking footballs anywhere and you're not sure where you should be kicking them towards. Let's take a look at one of the quotes that we saw from McKinsey Quarterly. Hobbled by nascent technologies, inconsistent metrics, and a reliance on outdated models, marketers are failing to tap their digital world's full power. Unless this problem is addressed, the inability to make accurate measurements of digital advertising's effectiveness across channels and consumer touchpoints will continue to promote the misallocation of budgets and to impede the healthcare industry's growth. That's a quote from the McKinsey Quarterly, which also highlights the importance of that. So number 5, finally, staying vigilant. We want to urge companies that are under tough regulations, especially healthcare companies, to invest in an expertise on FDA regulations around digital marketing so that they can navigate the waters much more clearly, much more closely, and take advantage of all the benefits that digital marketing has to offer within the social media sphere. Here are 2 examples that we see from digital marketing opportunities. Healthcare company Bayer on April 2nd became the first large healthcare company to enter social media site Pinterest. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, Pinterest is a social media site which allows different people and organizations to be able to, quote unquote, pin some of their favorite things from all around the internet and allow other people to be able to see what's focused up here. And so what you see here is an example of a Pinterest site for Bayer. So we see Bayer businesses, sustainability, innovation, and you can actually see some of the things that they're doing within each one of those things. This is an actual perfect opportunity for one of your organizations, business units, or your organization as a whole to try and get in and engage with people on a social media site that's really been growing a lot over the past year. An example of a social media site that's been taking a lot of hits is Facebook. Now, as I'm sure a lot of the healthcare companies know, Facebook has refused to allow companies to take down comments. And that actually created a very, very large problem for healthcare company Janssen, who had an award-winning Psoriasis 360 page. But because of all the comments that were coming up about adverse events, which, as you know, you have to report, as well as comments about other people's drugs, other people's medications, they recognized that they were spending way too much time moderating comments, and as a result, ended up having to take down their Facebook page. So what we're saying here is stay vigilant, but make sure that you're investing in that expertise so that you can navigate those tough waters. Now, we've gone through the 6 key insights that we've seen. We've gone through the 5 ways that you can improve your digital marketing organization. And maybe right now what you're saying is this is a lot of great information, but I really would like some more information on what we can do, how we can move forward. One of the things I want to introduce you guys to is a 2013 Digital Marketing Consortium. And the reason why Best Practices decided to create a consortium was because of some of these questions that we had. You know, I know that there are a lot of partners that are listening right now who are on this study, and they probably know it just as well that there were a lot of questions that came out of this study. It created a lot of answers, but it really created a lot of questions. We recognized that not a lot of people were investing in trying to figure out what's going on within the digital marketing sphere. So what we wanted to do was offer this to our participants, as well as be able to offer this to people who might be interested in how they can impact their digital marketing organization. And so our Digital Marketing Consortium are planning on answering that key question once again of how do we make the most of digital marketing, with questions such as how do you align your digital marketing strategy, what's the optimal structure for digital marketing success, and what are some of the attributes of successful digital marketing professionals. We want to be able to tackle some of these tough questions over the course of the next year and really dive deep, get really deep into the type of information that we're looking at here. And so these are some of the things that might explain why the consortium would be helpful for you. Things such as the research and insights that we plan on doing, a deeper, richer analysis, theme creation. We also plan on having an advisory support model that should be able to help you and your team, as well as live and online learning events just like the one here, but which would actually allow participation between the people who are listening as well as the people who are speaking. So as you can see in the box on the right, this will be a 3-part series, which will end up being 3 report deliverables throughout the year, as well as a customized health check for each person who participates, as well as virtual briefings. If this is something that you guys might be interested in, make sure to reach out to your account manager, or you can email me personally at mhines@bestpracticesllc.com. So as of right now, I want to take a pause and see what types of questions might be out there that we might be receiving, and see what I might be able to help you guys out with.
Thanks, Melvin. That's some great information that our clients on the line can take back, implement some immediately and some long term. We do have a couple of questions. I don't know if you want to scroll back to slide 10 and 12, where you talked about the Center of Excellence versus a centralized model when you were speaking about structure. And we had a question come in, if you could explain the difference again as it relates to digital marketing, realizing that those structures could look a little bit differently inside each person's company, but just the basics.
So this is slide 10, and as you can see, we have the centralized marketing group on the left, the Center of Excellence in the middle, and then we have the hybrid groups. So what we mean by a Center of Excellence is a key group where experts and expert resources from throughout your organization can come together to craft an alignment strategy around your organization's overall corporate strategy. That Center of Excellence is really kind of like the brain trust of your organization that will help move your digital marketing function forward. Now, how that differs from a centralized marketing group is that typically what we see in centralized marketing groups are not that there's an alignment strategy so much as there are people who only do the marketing for that entire organization. So under centralized marketing groups, you'll, and this might be more typical of organizations that have business units that don't have their own branding, for example. A centralized marketing group will be the one hub to do all of the marketing, whereas under a Center of Excellence, it's not really the hub that does the marketing, it's the hub that plans how to strategically align the organization with the organization's corporate strategy. And then throughout the various business units, you can see that being implemented. So that's kind of how we separate centralized marketing group from Center of Excellence.
Okay, great. If you have any other questions, feel free to submit them in the bar there to your right. In the meantime, I'd like to let you know that we will make the slides available to you within the 1 to 2 business days. Please look for an email from my colleague Miles Stern containing that information. We'll wait another minute or two for questions. We have some specific questions coming in that will be available for that your account manager can follow up with you individually. And otherwise, we'd like to thank you for your time today, and we please expect an email from my colleague Miles Stern.